Team USA, gathered from all across America. And we're going to stick together. You know why?
Because we are ducks, and ducks fly together.
That's right, Jan. And just when you think they're about to break apart,
Ducks fly together!
When the wind blows hard and the sky is black,
Ducks fly together!
And when the roosters are crowing and the cows are spinning circles in the pasture?
okay,
Ducks fly together!
And when everyone says it can't be done, ducks fly together.
All right. Welcome to another podcast by the Nerd Culture Podcas. I am Dan on Nerd Culture Podcast. I am doing another review for the Mighty Ducks. And this time my review is for D2, the Mighty Ducks. And let me just start off by apologizing first because I have a feeling that I may curse this movie out. I'm going to try to avoid cursing just for the point of to make it more kid friendly, I guess, because this is really meant to be a kids movie, especially from Disney. But this movie was not good at all. It just wasn't good. It wasn't horrible, but it just wasn't good at all. On a scale of 10, I mean, I'm not going to even rate it at the end. I'm going to give you the rating now. On a scale out of 10, I'm giving this a movie a 4, just because it just wasn't that good. And when I'm looking at what Rotten Tomatoes has, I think listed this at like 20%, which is actually, I think, less than the first movie. And then I believe the IMDb rating was like a 6 out of a 10, which is even a little too generous to me. I don't know, was that IMDb? I don't know if that was IMDb, but it was just too generous to me. Let me just look to see who actually gave what rating here. So I just want to understand what the ratings were here, because this film was filmed in 1994. Okay, so yeah, IMDb 6.1 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes 20%, but yet 89% of the Google users actually like this movie. Now I don't know what that really means. Does that? Wow, that's. I don't really know. that's a tough one. So yeah, we'll get into a little recap of this movie, I guess. Here's just a short recap of what the movie is. An international competition for junior league hockey teams is being held in Los Angeles. Coach Gordon Bombay, played by Emilio Estevez, is picked to lead Team USA. He reunites the Mighty Ducks, the teen misfits he once coached to victory. This time, crass sports promoter Tibbles, Michael Tucker, attempts the Ducks to cash in on their fame in lieu of practicing, but the team eventually gets back into training and takes on Iceland and their violence-prone coach, Wolf Stanson. So it was pretty intense movie with the Iceland guys, because that was kind of like the villain. They made Iceland into a big villain, and even the coach, they made him into a pretty nasty villain too. But there were a lot of things in this movie that just were not believable at all. Like just from, not even from a hockey perspective, but from a common sense perspective. And I couldn't get into this as much as I want. I mean, there were parts that were okay. And then after that, like towards the end, I was just shaking my head, and I was like, wow, I'm like, this is just ridiculously stupid. So let's go into the recap, because I'm going to give you guys some of the stuff that I think needs to be covered here. I just give you some of my thoughts on there. So we do open up with the show with Gordon Bombay, young Gordon Bombay, the kid, on the pond with his dad, and his dad reminds him, no matter how far you go, don't forget your home. That is a very, very, very nice little quote over there. because it's basically saying, if you make it all the way to the NHL or something like that, don't forget where you're from, don't forget your home. It's very good advice, I think, at this point. At least to start off the movie. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm like, that's a good like that's something nice to say. It's something I say. And then, we get into the credits, the beginning credits, and then then we get into Gordon Bombay in the minors, which is where he went to at the end of the first Mighty Ducks movie. And then he does score a goal. I believe he's playing for the Minnesota Waves, which is a minor league team. And then from there, he scores a goal, and then he's like getting into the corners, and he gets a hard hit on him, and he goes down with a knee injury at that point because of the hard hit. I guess the guy clipped his knee by accident, or the guy went after him. I mean, the guy clearly went after him, but he clipped his knee by accident, like legitimately by accident. So it was like, all right, it's like, it happens. These things do happen in sports, and that pretty much ended his hockey career. At least that's the indication that he ended his hockey career. So now we see Gordon Bombay on the bus home to Minneapolis at this point. And Jan, not Heinz, but Jan picks him up. And Gordon Bombay asks him, I think he asked him about Heinz, and he says, oh, he left the shop. He let me, and Jan's like, he left the shop. He let me run it by myself at this point. I think he took off with some woman. Now we get into, Gordon Bombay wakes up in the pro shop over there, that Jan is in charge of. So clearly Gordon Bombay is staying inside the pro shop. I guess he needed a place to stay, which I'm a little confused about, because I would figure that he had his own home. But I don't know, kind of strange. Because I don't know what happened. Did he not have I'm trying to remember, did he have his home? Did he have a home that he stayed at in the first movie? I thought he did. But did we really get that? I don't remember now, but it doesn't matter anyway. Anyway, he wakes up, and he wakes up to Charlie Conway basically doing skate sharpening, and Jan talks about things a little bit, about what's happening now, and Charlie says how he was hired but he's not getting paid. He's basically doing this for free. And then I guess Jan talks a little bit about Charlie and something or other, and I think he might have mentioned something about Charlie's mom getting married. I'm not exactly sure what happens there. But then, he hints to Gordon Bombay about the Team USA Goodwill Games. And, because Bombay needs a new career now that his minor league gig is up. And, he's thinking about going back to being a lawyer. But he's like, and he basically says, I can't coach Pee Wee hockey. That's not really a career. All right. So first of all, let me start off with, I can't coach Pee Wee hockey. That's not a career. Because you can make that into a career. Maybe not an extreme career, but coaches in a lot of these, maybe not a youth league coach, because a youth league coach won't get you anywhere. But let's say, you got like all these squirts and banthams and all that, right? A rink may want to look for a coach to lead these teams to victory, to basically lead these teams to be better teams and get the best players possible and whatnot. So they might actually hire a coach and pay a coach to run practices and coach the team, get the teams going. And they'll do it for a few years. So can you make a career out of it? Maybe. Can you last a few years out of? Yeah, you could definitely last a few years as a coach and get paid to do so. What the pay grade is, I don't know. I never coached a Pee Wee team or any sort of team like that. Wouldn't mind doing that, actually, considering I played hockey for over 20 years and I had a great coaching mind. But in the same sense, I'm kind of healing up from myself. So I'm taking my little break from hockey. But anyway, except for this, so let's move on from there. So we talk about that, and he's like, oh, whatever. He didn't seem too interested. And then he's sharpening his skates, and then he's in a pro shop, and Heinz talks to him a little bit more. And then he goes back to sharpening his skates, and then he goes to greet a customer in a pro shop, and the customer, I believe, is Hendrix from Hendrix Hockey Apparel. And Hendrix Hockey Apparel is looking there to be the sponsor for Team USA for the Goodwill Games, and they are looking for a coach. Basically, Hendrix came back and told Gordon Bombay that Jan basically hyped you up a little bit. He said that you'd make a great coach, so I really want you to be the face of Team USA. And he kind of like sold it, like, think about this, kind of like selling this. Think about this, you're the face of America, kind of. But didn't really say that, but you're the face of Team USA, your household name, and this and that and that. And it was a little weird hype up, but Hendrix seemed okay. He seemed nice at the time. So he says, I want you to lead a team, basically, and I want you to lead them to victory for these Goodwill Games. So they're Goodwill. Remember, the Team USA Goodwill Games. They're not anything other than that, which means that the indication is you're doing this for goodwill. So you're not doing this to win a spectacular trophy or gold medals or anything like that, right? You're just basically doing this to win a little tournament for the Goodwill Games and be there with your opponents for a good cause, basically, at this point. So all right, so he says, he gets his little duck call thing. I think Jan gave him a duck call, and he goes over to Charlie and to Charlie's house, and he's outside of the house he does his duck call for Charlie. Charlie comes outside and he's like, "Hey, you want to play some hockey?" And and he's like, and Charlie comes out, he's all excited. So he takes the duck call. He goes to get Jesse. Then Charlie and Jesse go to get Averman, who's at a movie theater. I think Jesse was actually playing hockey already at that point. So Charlie and Jesse were already still in the hockey thing. Averman's at a movie theater. Then Jesse and Averman and Charlie go get to get Connie and Guy, who are basically in a romance at this point. And they're about to kiss in a park, and the duck call comes and interrupts them. And then they go to get Goldberg. I think Goldberg's working in like a hot dog stand or a shop or some a food stand of some sort. So they go to get him, and then Jesse, Averman, Connie, Guy, Goldberg, and Charlie all get to get Banks, who Banks is part of a rich town. One thing that was corrected for me on Twitter, thank you to the person who corrected me on Twitter, was the fact that I mentioned cake eater, and I mentioned that I don't really know what it meant. I hope it didn't mean what it really meant, like a perverted term. And thankfully, it did not mean that. The person that mentioned it to me was actually from Minnesota, and they said that the term cake eater was used basically for a rich person from one of the rich towns in Minnesota. And I was happy to hear that, because that made a little bit more sense to me. I didn't know the history about that. So so they call him cake eater. Hey, cake eater, you want to play hockey? And then they're all skating around, rollerblading around, basically, and the Hawks are there. Again, they're saying, "Oh, here come the Ducks. They beat us last year. Let's get back at them." So they set up like a tripwire to try to trip up the Ducks. They're like, "Oh, they're too stupid." Blah blah blah. And then Fulton Reed comes behind him, and he's like, has this very 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 deep voice, and it was this funniest thing. And then he picks up the Hawks, and I don't know if it's the same three Hawks from the first movie that tried to go after the Ducks, but and then he picks up the Hawks and basically bullies them around a little bit, and then and then we're there. So we're there, and we've now gathered the Ducks that we could gather from last year into this movie. So we're going into basically what's going to be the next scene, leading into the next scene, where we have Hendrix from Hendrix Hockey Apparel telling Gordon Bombay that there's an endorsement deal, and he wanted Gordon Bombay to sign an endorsement deal. Apparently there was a lot of money behind it, and because Hendrix Hockey Apparel was a sponsorship, Gordon Bombay was going to get paid for all these crazy things that he would have to do, just to make Hendrix Hockey Apparel happy, right? So we get onto the ice, and now we have the old Ducks all on one side, and we get introduced to the new Ducks, or the folks that are going to be playing on Team USA, as they're calling it for now. So yeah, and each one of them have a little gimmick, which is the same thing almost that they had in the first movie, that each one of them had some sort of gimmick of some sort, or some sort of association with them. So the first one was Luis Mendoza from Miami, speed skater, looked to be a really great hockey player. Only problem was he could not stop. So he can skate. He's a fastest skater, but he could not stop. But yet they're putting him on the team. And then you have Dwayne Robertson, who is the best puck handler that I've ever seen, period, is what the guy, he goes, oh, for his age, he goes, no, the best puck handler that I've ever seen. And he is from Austin, Texas. Then you have Julie the Cat Gaffney from Bangor, Maine. Julie is actually my favorite out of the new cast on there. Just because the girl goalie thing is just awesome. I had a girl that played. With the team that I was on has only had one girl play on it ever, and I think it was only for like 2 or 3 games, and she was a goalie, and she wasn't the best goalie we ever had, but she was pretty good. And I looked at Julie, and because my background is from ice hockey perspective, I started as a goalie, and I was trained by Craig Barnett, who was a minor leaguer from the New York Rangers. I usually lean towards the goalies a little bit more when I see a good goalie, right? So I'm watching Julie practice, and I'm like, wow, she's a really good goalie. I'm like, this is the type of goalie that I would want on my team. Like, I wouldn't care if she's a girl or not. Like, that doesn't make a difference to me. We've played against plenty of girls in our leagues. And I've had the one girl goalie on my team, and she, in her first game, she got a shutout, which was an awesome thing too. But I'm watching her, and I'm like, man, she's such a good goalie. I'm like, this is the type of goalie that needs to be your starter. I mean, she's great. I mean, she's awesome. And of course she's from Maine. So, Maine has some of the best hockey players there. Maine and Minnesota typically have your best hockey players, I think. The Northeast has a pretty good hockey sense. And then you start talking about, the Midwest a little bit, where we're talking about Minnesota and stuff like that. I don't know if that's Midwest. I don't know what that's considered. But you start talking about, areas like that, and they all have their great hockey players too. Like Michigan and Minnesota are really, really where you're going to find kind of your best around there. Then you have Kenny Wu, who was a figure skater, and he was basically the kid that was a little Chinese kid. I don't know if he's Chinese or he's Asian. I don't know if he's some Asian. I don't know if he's Chinese or not. But he was very, very small kid. He didn't even look like he was a teenager. He probably looked like he was 8 years old. And he was the one that was like, he was a figure skater, but he was convinced to play hockey because it was better for him. And I guess they somehow convinced him. He was a pretty good skater. Not necessarily the best hockey player, but had some interesting little movements there. Yeah. And then we have the enforcer, who was Portman. You don't actually get introduced to him as Portman to begin with. They just called him the enforcer, and he starts bullying around everybody, just getting into it, and everyone just starts fighting amongst each other. You have the new Ducks and the old Ducks kind of jawing at each other, and at this point, they want to get a scrimmage. They want to get a scrimmage going. So they basically get a scrimmage going at this point, and scrimmage was okay. You basically have I think Mendoza went into Goldberg and he couldn't stop. So basically he stopped. Goldberg stopped his fall. I think there was another. I forgot what happened. I don't know exactly what happened during the scrimmage. I don't remember exactly what happened, but the end of the scrimmage, showed when what's his name, Fulton actually took a slap shot, and the slap shot hit the post, and then at the time, uh, hold on one second, I'm trying to go through my notes here. At the time, I guess uh, what's his name, Hendricks got hit with the puck, I guess, as he's talking to the girl that played Michelle McKay, who ends up being introduced as the tutor for the Mighty Ducks, right? So they came around and they needed a tutor. She was introduced as a Ducks tutor, and eventually, they went ahead and uh, they were told that uh, they needed a tutor. Um, and at that point, they said that if they didn't get the tutor, if they didn't show up to class, that they wouldn't be able to play hockey. So that was a big thing. And I was like, well, I'm like, I can understand that. You have kids out on the road, could be doing during the school year, and they might need to learn something. So yeah, you got to go to class. And if you don't if you don't go to class, and if you don't succeed, you don't play hockey. And it's actually quite true. Like if you're playing like in high school sports, I'm sure, where if you're on the team and you don't do well enough, they can take you off the team to focus on your academics. And I think the same goes for college as well too. Despite you might have a scholarship, you have to do well. So that is something to that kind of was a good part, I think, when he started hitting a little bit real on there. So then you got a little ridiculous. You had some of the Ducks on the Zamboni, and they basically got on the Zamboni. I think it was Fulton, Charlie, and I want to say it was Jesse, and they were on the Zamboni, and they just went through basically the entire, not even the glass, but they just went through the entire rink, like I guess the boards through the rink. They crashed the Zamboni through the boards and destroyed the boards on that side. Little unrealistic to me, and a little stupid, because if you're doing that, first of all, those boards are pretty damn hard, and if that Zamboni's going through it, that Zamboni's got to be going really quick, right? And I've seen a Zamboni hit a door and the boards, and the boards don't get damaged that much. But anyway, so it was a little unrealistic to me, at least for that part. But it is what it is. And then we start with the practice. They go ahead and go with the practice, and Coach Bombay basically goes ahead and ties the team together. Like he ties the old Ducks and the new Ducks together. And of course, he says, he makes a point that we want to be together. We want to be together as a team. We need to play together. We need to think together. We need to, be together. So, skate together first. And, that's when you'll be like that. And you'll be together as a team. And so we go ahead with that. And, they start skating one way and another way and all this, nonsense before finally, we see Coach Bombay started leading them one way only, and that's kind of was cool. It was a neat concept, actually. I thought I never thought about tying my team together to stay together as a team, but it was quite funny when I was laughing about that, because I've held team practices, and that's not something that we would typically do like that. But it is funny to even think about them needing to do that. So it wasn't bad practice when I'm looking at this. And then he goes to Dwayne Robertson. He goes, oh, Dwayne lassoed them up. So now Dwayne's chasing after all the players with the lasso, basically trying to lasso them one by one. People have to get away from him to get away from the lasso. So it's helping people out on their skating, and they're having a lot of fun with it, right? And then a little ridiculous after that, they're showing them lined up doing line dancing, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But they eventually do get their Team USA jerseys right after that, and they weren't too happy about it, because it had sponsorship on it, and they're like, this really isn't a Ducks jersey, and he's like, no, it's a Team USA jersey, but we're sponsored by this team. And he's like, well, I think Charlie was a little upset it wasn't a Ducks jersey, but he kind of took it into consideration that that was Team USA, So we move on to the next scenes. So actually, I like this practice scenes and all this that were happening. You know, the introductions were a little ridiculous with the players. I thought with who they were and their little gimmicks that they had. But I did like the practice scene a little bit more. Just because it gave some neat ideas for teams that want to hold practices. You know, on some things to do to really get some interesting concepts. I thought it was cool. It wasn't horrible. It just wasn't great, but this wasn't a horrible part of the movie. I'll get into the horrible part of the movie soon. So right now, the movie's hitting okay. So we're getting to the next scene. The class has basically an outing. They're outside learning outside basically at this point from the teacher. So they're learning about more about history, about about the culture and how sports really weren't a thing and when they became competitive, it wasn't just to be the best, but it was just to be for pride more or less. So I think that was kind of an interesting class outing. I like the teacher when she said that. That was cool. And then you have a little practice. They're out there rollerblading and like they're military. Coach Bombay's out there like treating them like military. So that was okay. That part was wasn't anything spectacular. Wasn't anything to really that was gonna break the movie as far as I was concerned. We have our first game. So they're at the LA Memorial Coliseum, and it's USA versus Trinidad. And we get introduced to Russ Tyler in the stands, who's trash talking Jesse a little bit and trash talking the team. They do end up beating Trinidad 9-2. Portland and Fulton Reed are known as the Bash Brothers at that point because they start going crazy with hitting guys all over the place. Once Trinidad scored a little bit and made it a little bit close. So yeah, I mean, we get that part, and then we have some scouts in there. And then Hendricks was pretty happy at that point, with the win. So we move on because now we have this press conference outside, and there's this Hendricks Apparel hockey bear mascot as Coach Bombay is doing a press conference. And during a press conference, they came around and said, Iceland's a team to beat. Or do you think you guys can beat them? And what does Coach Bombay said? He kind of just keeps it very simple and saying, Team USA is going to go all the way. We're going to have fun, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then the Iceland coach comes out and really he's drawing now a little bit more of at Coach Bombay. So he stirs up the pot a little bit. It's Wolf Stanson, his name is, or Wolf the Dentist Stanson. And Bombay was a little surprised because this guy wasn't in the NHL but kicked out because his reputation was so bad. So it just stirs it up a little bit. They show up and he stirs up the pot a little bit there. And he's like, oh, we're gonna beat Team USA and all this stuff. And I mean, just showing up like that, it kind of reminds me of a little bit of like when you have a boxing match and you have your opponent shows up and starts jawing at you and all that stuff, right after the weigh-in or whatever. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. So that was okay, but I don't know. I don't know if that was necessary. It just seemed like a kind of a jerk move, I guess, at that point, because you're just lack of respect at this point. All right, so we go on to the next scene, and Hendricks basically gives Gordon Bombay a Malibu beach house at that point, and Bombay was going to stay with the kids in the dorms and to watch him 24/7, but he gave him the Malibu beach house instead, and he's like, what, the kids can have the dorm. I'll definitely stay here. So then we get to the kids in the dorm, and I think we get who was it? Goldberg, Kenny Wu, and I forgot who else was with them. I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but anyway, they were putting the shaving cream. They're doing that whole uh joke, the shaving cream in a hand on Dwayne and tickling his nose with the feather. So it was like you're at a camp, like at an actual summer camp of some sort. So they're like in a in their beds and they're in their dorms, camp, whatever, and Dwayne's like hitting his face with the shaving cream. That was kind of funny. And then you had Fulton and uh sorry, just losing track here a little bit. Fulton and Portman were in their own dorm too, and they were like acting like they're acting like badasses, like, oh, let's play this music, music to go to sleep to, and it was supposed to be rock music, but it really wasn't rock music. It was just, I don't know, it was just then they started like jumping up and down in the beds like they're playing air guitar. So they're the kids are all acting up in their dorms. I thought maybe this was going to lead to a part where like the kids were too tired to play the next day because they were up like joking around. But that necessarily wasn't the case, and I was happy to see that. So basically, at this point, right before the next day, Gordon Bombay meets a trainer. So we're getting into the next scene. Gordon Bombay meets a trainer for the Iceland team, has a little thing for her. And then the team wins 11-0 over Italy. So it was a good game overall for Team USA. So you just proved that they were having fun, and for them having fun, they actually won because they had a little bit of fun. Then we get into a little bit of a weird scene that I just wasn't sure was needed at this point, but I guess it was more along the lines of like we really needed to see uh, hockey players and other stars from Los Angeles there. I guess he needed to throw them into this particular movie because it was about a year after the Anaheim Mighty Ducks were actually formed. They probably filmed it while the Anaheim Mighty Ducks were formed, more than likely. So they probably wanted to, get the stars on there. So I remember I was a little like, well, okay, this is just weird on this. So Gordon Bombay's like living in luxury with all these women taking his pictures and stuff like that, right? So he's being like more fancy and rich, more than a fun coach at this point. And then he goes to a party, and at that point, the party, he meets like Cam Neely, Chris Chelios, Luke Robitaille, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as well as some other, I think Chris Yamaguchi, and I think a couple other famous people were there too. Sports stars were there. So and he's like, he's talking to Kareem. He's like, oh, kids are gonna want to grow up to be a coach because of me, and that's kind of what we're trying to sell now. And Kareem's like, oh, really? He's like, I don't know about that. And then so it was just a weird scene that I just wasn't sure was necessary at this point in time. And then you got, since they're in Los Angeles, the kids decided to go to Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. So you have Robertson is calling it Rodeo Drive. He doesn't see a rodeo there. And then you have essentially Goldberg and Averman and Charlie are they're going to trying to go to these different shops, and they're not being let in, and and finally they get into one shop because Goldberg says that he's Aaron Spelling's nephew or something like that, and they let him in because of that, which is, first of all, just telling somebody you're Aaron Spelling's nephew and you'll let you in, not going to happen in Beverly Hills. First of all, I can tell you that much for certain. They're going to want proof of that, first of all, and they're going to need to. They'll just know. And then somebody does recognize them as Team USA, but they went on and they're watching these women try on these clothes, because apparently they're looking something for Goldberg's mother, and then. So these women are trying on these clothes, and I think they go through 3 sets. And I think after the third one, he was kind of a little satisfied. First one, Goldberg's like, no, I don't like it. Second time, Goldberg's like, no, I don't like it. Third time, he's like, oh, that's better. And then the fourth one, he's like, I think my mother's looking for something in the lines of a bikini. And finally they realize that these kids are jerking around and they kick them out. So it was a pretty it was a pretty bad scene overall. I mean, I guess it was just for comedy, but it wasn't like anything that I would believe. All right, so we move on a little bit more to like basically what's considered the next day. Uh, Julie Gaffney approaches Coach Bombay in his office, and she basically tells Coach Bombay, "Hey, I want to play." And Bombay's like, "You're gonna get your chance." And she's like, "Look, I came here from Bangor, Maine. I left Bangor, Maine to show people what I can do. I really want to play." And he's like, just wait. You will get that chance. You will get to show people what you can do. Um, and I thought that was really cool that Julie was more. This is why I liked her more in this one, uh, because she got enough courage to ask the coach just to play. Now, again, I'm going to point it out to you guys that when I'm watching Julie in the practice, I can see she's the better goalie than Goldberg. But he's like, Goldberg's a hot goalie. I got to stick with him. But you will get your chance, right? And I'm laughing about this a little bit more to myself because it reminds me of a time that I was playing junior varsity soccer in high school. And I think it was my first year or my second year. I don't remember what, I think it was my second year now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it was my second year. And sophomore or junior, yeah, it was my junior year. And I went up to the coach because I didn't really play freshman year. I got put into games here and there, but I really didn't play a lot my sophomore year because we had a coach that really just didn't want to play certain people, right? But then we got to my junior year and I was still playing, and he wasn't playing me along with some other people because they weren't seeing anything, and they were looking at basically the kids that were the superstars, right? Like they always do. And I finally approached the coach because my mother, she actually pushed me to do this. She says, if you're gonna play soccer, you got to play. You ask the coach to put you in games. Just go up to him and ask him. So my mother made me a little bit more brave and courageous on that. Where I went up to the coach and I asked him to play, and he says, "All right, let me think." And he was cool. The coach was really cool. He ended up being a teacher, and I don't know. I hate to say, I think he married some girl that went to high school over there. So I don't know how that worked out. But anyway, it doesn't make a difference. He was a cool soccer coach. I remember him taking us to like New Jersey Devil games and stuff like that. And the team got to hang out together. So like, it was a class before me and myself and a couple other kids that went to these games. He kind of started playing a little bit favored on me because I approached him, and I think he had more respect for me when I approached him. And I think it was it was either the next game or the game after that. He actually put me in the game, and he put me on defense because I think he asked me, "What do you want to play?" And I said, "Let me play defense," because I told him, I said, for when I'm playing hockey, I normally would play, I would probably play goalie with roller hockey, I think at the time. And so I said, well, since I don't want to, you can put me as a goalie, but we have a really good goalie already. So why don't you put me as a defenseman because it's about as close as we can get. And he was blown away by, I hate to toot my own horn, and I'm getting away from this movie review a little bit, but he was like blown away as how great of a defenseman I was because I was aggressive. I didn't mind slide tackling. I played great defense. I wasn't like a goal scorer, but I was pretty fast. I mean, if he would have put me up front, maybe I would have scored a goal or two. But it was just, I knew the game, and he was so impressed that I played every game after that. And as a starter too. So it was very different, and I was like, wow, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Unfortunately, when I got into varsity, things changed until we got into a playoffs against a team that was no, it wasn't even playoffs. I think it was right before the playoffs. We got into the team that was known to be more of a goon ghetto team, and they've been known to hurt players. So they put me in when the teams were when our team was down like 4-0, and that was like maybe like wow, so far into the season, finally the coach saw what I could do, and so did the team captain. And they're like, you got to take example from him. Look how hard he tried when we're down 4-0. And then, I think I quit during the playoffs to play hockey. So just a little background story. But anyway, kind of similar to what Julie's doing here is that she went up to the coach to ask to play. I was a little disappointed, though, to see that the coach did not start her the next game, because I think he could have started her the next game. And it might have made a little bit of a difference. Not a total difference, but a little bit of a difference. And the reason why is because, Goldberg, yes, he's a hot goalie right now, but the team was destroying the other team, right? So the next thing that they have is that they're basically playing Iceland. So that's what's coming up. But before we're playing Iceland, Fulton and Portman catch Coach Bombay with the Iceland trainer eating ice cream. So he's like talking about his team to the Iceland trainer, who apparently just goes back and tells the Iceland coach, all the secrets that Bombay shares. She seems to be very nice at first, but I guess, there's a little she's getting a little skeevy there with things, and I don't think she's meant to be. I think she was asked to be. But yeah, it was USA versus Iceland at that point. Iceland goes up 5-0, so they take Goldberg out, and finally he puts Julie in. The two Iceland players come up to Julie, and they make fun of her for being a girl playing. Julie basically says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sorry boys, but I'm having a hard time with my pads. Can you help me?" And like horny teenagers, they're like, "Oh, really?" And then like they go to help her, and she basically knees them in the gut, both of them. And then at that point, she's kicked out before she even could play a game, which is very unfortunate. Portman's also kicked out in this game because he was kicked out like 3 seconds in because he accidentally hit the ref after some nonsense happens right at the beginning. So Julie meets Portman in the locker room, who's going crazy and being like throwing things around. And she's like, "Oh, I know how you feel." Essentially, Banks does score, but after he scores, he celebrates, and one of the Iceland players comes around and slashes his wrists really hard. So I'm going to say this because I've been slashed on the wrist once. I had a fractured wrist, and I was at a hairline fracture, and that hairline fracture was enough to make sure that I could not move my wrist around, and I was out for 6 weeks. Later on, we'll talk about what happened later on, because Banks returns pretty quickly from there. But that slash in itself, that slash warrants basically an immediate suspension because that's intent to injure. And that was something that definitely would be caught by refs even back then, because an intent to injure, you're out, you're gone. Like you could be kicked out of the league for that, especially at that age. So that is something I don't know if that was something that was explored, or if they just wanted to make a statement and show something that happened. But anyway, bottom line is Team USA loses 12-1. And then basically Hendricks comes on and he tells Gordon Bombay, he's like, "You're only good to us, as the sponsor if we win." So he gets a little bit of a prick there, is what I'm going to say, because it wasn't that nice. And then so Bombay goes in the locker room. He gets a little bit aggravated with the team, and he basically tells the team that stay for practice after the loss. And then Charlie Conway's coming around again and just saying coach, this isn't fun. And Bombay's saying, "Well, who said it was supposed to be fun?" And then Charlie's like, "Well, you said it was supposed to be fun when we were the Ducks." And Bombay goes around and says, "Well, we're not the Ducks anymore. We're Team USA now." And it was kind of like Charlie, you can tell, just wasn't having the fun that he should have had. So really, that was kind of a crappy thing. And because the kids had a late practice, they were in school and they were actually sleeping in school. So because they were sleeping in school, the tutor, Michelle McKay, she pulled them from the practice. And Bombay's like, well, who told them they can't show up to practice? She's like, I did. She's like, this is not what hockey's about. This and that and that. These kids are exhausted now. You kept them up late. They need a break. They're calling you what was it? Coach Blood or something like that, or I don't know, something weird. So yeah, so so it was kind of a strange situation. And then they did their own practice. So they meet up with Russ, and Russ basically, they're stretching their morning routine. They're like, why do we got to stretch? Why do I do this morning routine? They're saying, well, we got to keep in off ice shape too. So they're doing that on their own, which is really nice to see, that they keep on off ice exercise there. Even if it's for 30 minutes, it's pretty good, right? Probably kind of remind myself now about that, to do that. Then Russ comes and starts trash talking him, how they're to disgrace a Team USA and they're not a real Team USA. And then he goes, oh, you're gonna come if you want a real challenge, or if you want to have real fun, come play against my boys. Let's go play some schoolyard puck. So schoolyard puck's basically roller hockey game with some barrels, and it was like it's street hockey basically. And it was Team USA or the Ducks, as we're going to know them soon, against basically a ghetto team, a team from the ghetto. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. One of the things that I liked about this was that you're watching this team from the ghetto, just having fun and looking like that they would belong on Team USA themselves. So something I didn't touch base on earlier is that they just threw players onto the team just to throw players onto the team, right? They did not have a tryout for Team USA, and they needed to have a tryout. And that's kind of what that's kind of where this kind of throws me off a little bit, because if you don't have that tryout, what's going to happen? You are just going to be, it's just going to be stupidity. Just going to be a lot of stupidity. And so I guess they had a schoolyard puck, and they start teaching Team USA how to have fun again. Kenny Wu learns how to have learns how to have a fight, basically, how to do a fight. Rush shows off his knuckle puck at this point. So Fulton's impressed with the knuckle puck. So that's one thing that comes up. And then and I guess we go to another scene. So that was a little fun. That was a little fun part there. I was okay with that part. I think that showed that the kids reminded the kids on how to have some fun. We go to the next scene though, and then Jan shows up to Gordon Bombay's Malibu Beach house, and he basically says, "Who was that man on TV?" And Gordon Bombay is like, "Who's running the shop right now?" And he's like, "Nobody. I closed it down for the first time in 10 years because I needed to talk to you." And he kind of reminded what's his name, Gordon Bombay, to have fun. So similar to how Hines did it in the first movie, Jan is doing this in the second movie. And then we get to the scene of Gordon Bombay basically on rollerblades with the hockey stick. Same thing that he did in the first movie on ice though, but this time on rollerblades. Just basically trying to remember where he came from, kind of looking at that sunset, trying to remember where he came from, exactly where his, and trying to forget, not forget his home, like his father said in the beginning over there. So, it was because I think there was like a little flashback to him as a kid on that part. And, it was the same thing that they did on the actual first Mighty Ducks movie, and, kind of reminding himself to have some fun at that point, because that's what it's supposed to be. He's not supposed to be this made up, sponsor guy that's all dressed up to be a corporate guy, right? To be more of a corporate businessman. That's not what he's there for. So he doesn't show up to the next match, which I think was against Germany. I think it was against Germany. So Miss McKay, actually, Michelle McKay, coaches for like a couple shifts, and she was impressed with the coaching. And then Bombay shows up with a duck call, and they went ahead and they were a little uncertain about him. and he comes on the bench and he does a little speech about, how he realized what he did was wrong, or what he's doing is wrong right now, and he's there to have fun again and all this stuff. And then, they do the flying V again to score a goal. Yeah, then we go ahead, and yeah, we go ahead and we have I think essentially what's supposed to be. Hold on, I'm just reading through my notes here. Sorry, I'm a little confused where I left off. It's like 1:30 in the morning when I'm doing this podcast. But yeah, potentially. Oh yeah, then he has a little speech outside. That's what he did. So Bombay has a little speech outside, and he does this little speech outside about this is, I forgot exactly what he said, but he basically takes a promotion thing about the Hendrix hockey, and he takes promotion, puts it, and he lights a fire in a barrel, and he sets it on fire, basically saying this was not fun. Now we're gonna have fun a little bit. He does go up to Banks though, because Banks got hurt, and he asked Banks to twist his wrist, and Banks couldn't twist his wrist at all, and the coach is like, "You're out." He's like, basically, and Banks is a little upset. He's like, "There's scouts here, this and that and that," and he's like, "No, you're out. You're basically out at this point." And he goes, "Look, you're young. You have plenty of time. You're gonna have plenty of scouts looking at you. But you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your body at this point. This will heal," is what he said. Basically, what he's trying to tell him. But USA, then we get a little newspaper clipping. USA beats Canada, and then Russia actually beats Iceland. So kind of like puts USA and Iceland 1-1. The only difference is Iceland beat USA, so they're kind of tied for first, but Iceland's just on top of them with the same record. So because Banks is out, Charlie comes and tells Bombay, "You remember how I said I would make a good coach? Well, I found a replacement for Russ, and essentially, they have for Banks, and then they have Russ come in, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, you heard me? You never heard of my knuckle puck?" And he's like, "No." So then they put him as a replacement. You could tell Russ really can't skate that well. I mean, basically, he's just kind of gliding at this point. But they give him the puck, I guess, in a game against I think it's a game against Russia, and they were already up 2-1, and then Russ gives the knuckle puck, and he scores with a knuckle puck, and it's a 3-1 game, which is really cool. So now they're sort of up in the standings, and they're celebrating their victory before their last practice. And then so they're celebrating the victory, and they have a surprise, and basically Wayne Gretzky comes into the locker room. As we all know who Wayne Gretzky is. If you don't know who Wayne Gretzky is, you probably shouldn't be listening to this podcast. So again, another superstar, probably your biggest NHL star ever in Wayne Gretzky, right? I mean, there's so many of them, but when you hear the name Wayne Gretzky, I think everybody knows who he is. So he shows up, and he's basically at a point, just kind of like cool and laid back, just like, "Oh, it's a great one." He's like, I think he says like, "I try to be," or something like that, or he has a little funny line in it. So it's basically like, they're getting all these NHL players to try to promote the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, despite the fact that they're not going to be on the Anaheim Mighty Ducks anytime soon. So Disney basically got them over there. From there, they have their little fun practice on the ice with the beach ball, and then Team Iceland shows up because it's their time on the ice. And then Stanson picks up the beach ball and flattens it. And that was a interesting part, because then Stanson basically challenges Coach Bombay to a 1-on-1. So Bombay basically does like the post, like hit the 3 posts, whoever hits 3 posts win. I really wasn't a fan of Bombay accepting that challenge from Stanson, because he's like, Stanson's like, we'll see what you can do. Let's see that triple deke, because you just know Stanson's going to take that cheap shot on him, right? You know that some kind of dirty play is going to happen. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. Stanson hits the post first, Bombay hits another post, hits one post, and he hits another post. Then he reminds Stanson, "Oh, one more and you're done." And then he's about to go in one, and then Stanson basically two hands chops his knee, the one that was injured, and and it's a very cheap shot. And it was like, honestly, it's so cheap that it's borderline assault at that point, right? Because it's even though it's on the ice, it's not in an official game. There's nobody there. So you take that shot, you take a shot like that, you take a chop like that, and that's assault. I mean, that really is assault. Matter of fact, little side story. When I was playing, for a while in the adult leagues, there was a guy that used to go out and try to injure people. He actually hit me across the head on purpose, because I was a captain, and I guess one of our players pissed him off. And he hit me across the head on purpose and gave me a concussion. It wasn't an extremely hard hit, but it was just enough to really get my mind going, and get my mind going really bad too, and get me really sick for a few days. But he was known to do this against a couple people, just a couple players that he didn't like. He was a very good player, he had a lot of skill, but he had a bad attitude too. And I think, if I recall correctly, he actually had an assault charge on him because he actually took a pretty nasty shot against a player on the ice. I think from there, he actually ended up getting kicked out of the league. And I don't know what happened to him after that. Who knows? I mean, I don't even want to say the team's name, because if you hear the team's name, you'll just be like, yeah, that probably explains it. Because they might have been from, they might have all been in prison at some point in time. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, it was a pretty bad thing. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, it was borderline assault basically, and they, I don't know, maybe during that time or during that time period, you don't really look at those things. But if you were to do that today, that guy was in jail immediately. I can tell you that much. The cops are called. That guy's in jail immediately. So anyway, so now we go to Arrowhead Pond, where we have Team Iceland taking on Team USA in basically what's going to be considered a championship game. There's a lot of stupid, unreal moments in this game. So we get the Bash brothers who are going in there for basically acting like idiots on the ice and like kind of doing like misconduct stuff. So they're like, they probably could have been kicked out, but they're trying to hype up the crowd after a fight. Kenny Wu gets into a little fight, so they're trying to hype up the crowd for that. They're all like excited that he got into there. So now we got three Bash brothers, so all three of them are in there. So that was okay, but again, a little unbelievable. Then we have two parts that I absolutely hate in this movie. The first part was Connie goes in there, and I guess they're going after Connie a little bit more because she's a girl, and Dwayne doesn't like it. So Dwayne goes in there, and as the guy's going after Connie is about to hit him, Dwayne skates on the ice without his helmet on, has a rope in his hand, and lassos the guy in the middle of the game, and so this way he doesn't hit Connie. And then Connie, of course, hits him after that, gives him a cheap shot. And they give Dwayne a penalty for roping, of all freaking things. And I'm like, wow, this is not even believable. I'm like, this is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, nowhere is this going to happen in any game ever. I'm like, this is just really dumb. I'm like, this made a potential 6 out of 10 movie like now a 4 out of 10. And this is just the first thing that I hated about this, right? So the second thing that I hated about this was okay, so they put on new jerseys. They put on the new Ducks jerseys, the actual Anaheim Mighty Ducks jerseys in itself, and then they do all these little gimmick things like Kenny Wu splits the defense, and Fulton's about to take a shot, but he passes to Kenny Wu instead, and then Mendoza scores at that point. So I think they were up like Iceland was up like 5-2 at some point. So it looks like they were going to win, and it was like 5-4, right? And then here comes the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen ever in this entire. Besides the "We will quack you" chant to the "We will rock you" song, because they're like "We will quack you." I was like, all right, cute, but a little unnecessary. Here comes the most stupidest part of this movie. Oh, this is the part. Oh, and the other thing was Banks actually came back in this game because he was able to suddenly move his wrist around after like 2 days. He was perfectly fine, right? And they couldn't give him a spot back because the roster was full. So Charlie steps down and lets Banks have his chance. So Banks did have his chance, and he almost got injured again in the game, but he did, but he didn't. He was okay. So we have the stupidest part of this whole show, of this whole movie, which just totally made me hate it even more. So, Coach Bombay calls a timeout, calls the team in, figuring, what are they going to do? Typically, if you're down by 1 goal, what are you going to do? You're going to pull the goalie, right? So that's kind of what you're thinking about, is pulling the goalie. Now, suddenly, they have this little drop. Oh, they did the alley-oop thing too. I think that was the other thing that kind of was like a little different. I was like, oh, it's an alley-oop. I'm like, that was fine. That whole part was fine. I think Banks actually scored that goal. He tipped it in or something. But that was okay. That became a new thing for players to do after they started seeing the movie. But the stupidest part of this movie was the timeout, and you're thinking they're going to pull Goldberg, right? So you have a set play, and the Mighty Ducks are going, and they're passing, and then they're like, oh, they're passing up to this and up there, and they're passing back to Goldberg, and then Goldberg takes off his helmet, and it's not Goldberg, it's Russ Tyler. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're in front of 20,000 plus people, and you're telling me that nobody saw Russ Tyler put on any goalie pads or goalie helmet or switch with Goldberg anywhere. Nobody saw that out of 20,000 people. Nobody on the other team, nobody in the stands, no, not even the announcers. Nobody saw that at all. Like, that's just a little unbelievable. Oh, and then Russ Tyler takes his knuckle puck with the goalie stick too, and I'm just like, and he scores with exactly 0 seconds left to tie the game, and I'm like, I'll be honest with you, like, I was just so frustrated with this ending of this movie like this, that I was just ready to throw my remote control at the TV because it was so frustrating how stupid it was. I understand it was meant to be cute and funny, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't cute and funny to me. It was just like, this is just stupidity. I'm like, I don't need to see this garbage. This is just garbage. And this gives, this gives people the wrong idea of what hockey should be. I'm not saying, hockey should be fun. Absolutely should be fun. But, you're going to start throwing gimmicks out there for a hockey game? No, absolutely not. And something like that is just dumb. So anyway, the Ducks, they call themselves the USA Ducks at this point because they had the new jerseys on. They're in a shootout. I forgot exactly who scored the shootouts. Mendoza scored one because he was able to, I think, stop. No, did he not? No, he didn't score. He scored during the game. I forgot exactly who scored. I think Banks definitely got the winner though. I remember that Banks got I think Jesse scored the first one. Banks got the winner. And so who scored the third one? I don't remember who scored the third one. Doesn't make a difference now. Fulton scored the first one, the second one with the big slap shot, right? And then Banks got that third one. And then of course, Goldberg couldn't stop all the shots either. So they're tied 3-3. No, sorry, Banks got the game winner. So there was actually 4 goals, and in order for them to win, they had to stop the last shot. So what do they do? Because Gunnar is the top guy on Iceland, they put him in there, right? And Gunner's the one that was, I think he was one of the ones that was making fun of people, and the girls too. So what do? They put Julie in there, because now is her time to shine. Because why not put the girl goalie in there for the one shot that she's gonna have, right? For one shot, for one save, and basically Gunner, I don't even know what this is. This is the worst thing. Like, he literally did like a triple deke, and then he stopped at the blue line, and then he took a slap shot. I'm like, first of all, why didn't he do like a regular breakaway shot? Like, what is up with that? Like, he took a slap shot, and he just shot it right into her glove. Like, she just kept her glove there. Like, that's all she did. She just kept her glove there. She didn't move it or anything. And I guess that was her save. And I was like, that really wasn't a good save. I'm like, honestly, you give this girl her one shot by putting her into this big situation, and you actually made her look worse by doing that, because you can't see how she plays the full game. You can't see how she handles pressure during the entire game. You can see how she handles pressure in a moment, right? So that's just, she handled it. See, obviously nervously, but she handled it. But during the entire game, you're not seeing how she handles pressure. And she should have had that one start. They should have put her in there for the one start, like maybe against Iceland, or I don't, maybe not against Iceland, maybe against another team that maybe, after Goldberg didn't win, like they could have after the Iceland loss, they could have went ahead and had Julie start the next game, basically saying, "Hey, Goldberg, you're gonna sit. You lost the last game. It was a bad game. We want to give Julie the start that she deserves." Like, that's probably what I would have done as a coach. As it is, they didn't do that. But they still won anyway because they had the better teams. But it's just stupidity. But again, Julie makes a save, and Team USA Ducks win. And I forgot what Coach Stance's name final word was. I think he said something along the lines of, "Oh, Gunner, you disappointed me," or something like that. I forgot. He said something along the lines of that, and then Gunner's like, "No, you did that to yourself." And then Gunner's like, "Come on, Team Iceland, let's go shake their hands." So it was like, Gunner was showing a good sportsmanship there, which I thought was really cool. And then I think it kind of taught Stanson a little bit more about sportsmanship too, because we see him shake Bombay's hand at the end, and Bombay's like, "We'll see you next time." And I think that really showed a little bit more respect out of that one. I think I was happy to see that, at least, but it still was a little strange. And then we get to the end scene, where the kids are all around the campfire with the coaches and everyone. They're just basically singing "We Are the Champions" over there. Well, we see a plane, and the plane's basically turns into these ducks, and then they were there at the campfire, and the credits we're saying "We Are the Champions." And I thought it was that part was okay, but there was just a lot I didn't like about this movie compared to the last one. It wasn't a great movie. I'm gonna be honest with you. It was a pretty bad movie. But again, it's part of the franchise, so watch it. Anyway, so there's my podcast review on the Mighty Ducks. I rambled a lot. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I will probably do D3 Mighty Ducks next week. I might do it on Monday, to be honest with you, because I have the day off Monday, so I might put it up there. So we'll see. And yeah, this is, I don't think I remember D3 Mighty Ducks. I remember seeing the kids being much older in the preview on there, but I don't remember much about D3, the Mighty Ducks. And so I'm definitely gonna have to pay attention to this to see what I remember on this, or if I've even seen it. It might have been one of those movies that I did skip at some point in time. And then once we're done with the D3 Mighty Ducks, I will later on review the Mighty Ducks Game Changers. I will not do it by episode. I probably will just review the entire series, just to save you guys some time. And yeah, so there we go. So anyway, hope you enjoyed my review of the Mighty Ducks, D2 Mighty Ducks, on the Nerd Culture Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook. We're at the Nerd Culture Podcast there. We are also on Instagram. We are also the Nerd Culture Podcast on there. We are also the Nerd Culture Podcast on YouTube. We are also the at the Nerd Culture One on Twitter, so you can follow us on Twitter. And I don't know if we're on Spotify yet. I did submit it. By the time I upload this, we might be on Spotify and probably be on Apple, whatever the Apple one is, the Apple streaming is too. So I think we'll be on everything at some point. So yeah, I will absolutely, do some more of these. I know movies and TV are maybe not as popular, especially when I'm doing them with myself, but maybe I'll try to get a guest on at some point in time. Maybe I'll get something going on after the Mighty Ducks podcast, right? Maybe we'll see what happens with that. I wanted to do the Mighty Ducks first because that was kind of my niche with hockey. But maybe we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. Yeah, so there you have it. So give us a follow, give us a like anywhere, whatever you want to do. We have other shows as well, wrestling shows, sports shows, TV movie shows. We're going to be doing shows more specifically geared around Star Wars. We're going to be doing shows around music and video games as well. We will have special guests and special co-hosts as well on each show. So we'll not just be me talking. And yeah, there you have it, folks. So hope you guys enjoyed. And until the next one, we will quack you. And I'll see you guys, or hopefully you guys can hear me at that next one. So until then, peace out, everybody.